So we can start with an open discussion about the forums if you want, or we can just start discussing the document presented, which will also lead us to discuss the forums, is what I figured, so. Good? Thank you, sir.
What was the response rate to the survey? I mean, I only went to one forum, but I heard about another one, and the attendance was underwhelming.
Yes.
So how many, and then, so I did the survey too, which
Yeah.
I'm not sure I should have given.
Yeah, that's all right.
So I'm just wondering how many people actually, like, how many voices are these actually represented?
Yeah.
of?
I don't,
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry, I'm sure.
the question is how many voices are these representative of? When you add up the forums, the Community Advisory Committee, and the survey responses, it was around 119 when I tallied these up yesterday. So that was like total number. That being said, if someone like double hit things, I didn't have a way of knowing who those people were. So there might be people who did the survey and were at the forum and were also on the community advisory team. And so there might be representation in that way. The survey was a little bit different than the questions on the forum, and so I do think it gave us slightly different data points. But yeah, so that's the total number together.
I mean,
That's a-
overall, I agree that I wish we had gotten,
Do you want to speak into that?
I wish we had gotten probably 3 times as many people at each of the forums to make it work better. We did not get that, and it's hard to get people out, I guess. We have noticed, I will share this with all of you, we have noticed, not only with this effort, but in other efforts, it's getting harder and harder for people to come out to what they consider a forum or a meeting. And I don't know if that's post-COVID, people are just concerned about being in crowded places, or if they've just gotten into different habits or whatever. And a lot of meetings you can do via Zoom now, so there's that. But we're seeing that in other avenues of things that we're doing as well. So that means we have to rethink our messages. And I think one of the things is, if I were to do this all over again, I think it would have been wise to set a schedule like 5 small meetings or 8 small meetings in different locations and just work it out that way. And whoever showed up, showed up. And it wouldn't be called meetings. You just meet with a group that was already meeting, like the PTA or PTO or something like that, and you'd integrate yourself into the meeting that's going on, as opposed to everybody feeling like they have to come to something like this and respond. So that I can own in that way, but I can't. It really is interesting that there was like a big splash of people after the pandemic, and then there was this whole concern about what meetings you could go to electronically and what you couldn't, and now we're sort of seeing the outside of that, where it just seems less. And unless it's a really, really controversial issue, that's what we're seeing.
And actually that's a really good idea, because each of these community, they have some type of centers that we can use
Right.
to have these meetings. Like I know Lyman, they have a community center.
Yeah.
And on the flat,
Yep.
we have Kelly School, but there's also a community center down there.
Yep.
So there's different ones in
Yep.
here that we can have access to it.
Yep.
And have these meetings.
Yep. So, like I said, if I could do it all over again, I can't. So this is where we're at.
I do want to add that. I think that, Enlace would have been a great location to hold a meeting in the future. I think that would make sense. And also kind of setting up the schedule base, because right now you're going to have a lot of events coming up, and that was your ideal space.
Yeah.
I know that on the 14th, I will have the youth conference, and I could easily have all the youth answered, because they get points and get prizes for everything they answered.
Yep.
And we have an event this Saturday as well. So if they're still open, I can have them answer it. But
Thank you.
And I did actually put together, I spoke with some other student groups, and I put together a separate survey that is just for students, because that is a gap. When I was looking at the data, I was like, we don't have any student perspectives represented. And so I'll share that link with you. It is just a separate form. It's, I think, 3 or 4 questions, and it is open response. So students can just go in and add their responses, and then we can include that.
We can build that.
Into this to have as well.
I also think the timing of this, after the news that the superintendent was given another year, I think made things, I think then made people feel like, well, this work is already done, or this is a done deal, so why should I spend my time on it? So it's nobody's fault, but I just think the timing of it,
Yep.
I think didn't quite help, because I think people were like, oh, yeah.
Any other comments about the forums themselves before we move on to specific topics? I thought the people who came were really engaging. We had great conversations with them. So I feel really good about that. All right, let me start again here then. So in terms of communication from the superintendent and district, what's working? One was the idea that the multiple formats work. There was an improved in translation interpretation services. They're trying to create a strong teacher-family communication, good communication around basic needs, and opportunity for input, i.e. forums and SEAC, whatever. I do not know what SEAC stands for, but
Yeah, it must be.
it must be CPAC. So is there anything that somebody would like to add?
Yes.
That's the special ed.
This is me like trying to make sense of handwritten notes.
Which document are we going back to this document?
No, the document that, here, give her this one.
She has it. She printed.
Okay,
She's looking at the agenda.
we're not trying, that one.
Go through all this?
We're gonna review it, yes.
Maybe, here. Maybe a good question is when you think about what you saw in the data, if you had a chance to sort of review it, was there anything that stood out to you? Is there anything that you feel like surprised you? I know that some people are just looking at it now. Is there anything that you're sort of noticing?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
What took an incredible amount of time and effort were the pie charts. And I went through those, and I circled the ones that had half
Yes.
important or three-quarters important.
Yep.
I thought those were really important points
Yep.
and would serve well
Okay.
as a step-off point to the school committee, because there would be a visual, and it would be something that you could actually explain to them. Because this is a lot.
It's so much.
And I think that the pie charts were done very well. There were only two that I thought were kind of,
So which ones of the pie charts did you like best? I'll move to the pie charts here.
well, actually, let me get my pie charts.
I agree. I think the visual is really important.
I think showing that is really important. When I went through them,
Take your time.
the leadership qualities, listening to input, and seek demonstrative responses.
Which one am I
The
on?
part about acknowledging when he or she has made a mistake and accept responsibility. You know what? No matter what leadership position you're in, you're never going to please everybody, and you are going to make mistakes. But to spend all your time trying to recreate something that's gone by the board instead of just going on and saying, okay, that didn't work, let's move on. I didn't really like that. And then be able to think outside the box and propose.
Be able to think on, what number is on next?
Number 4,
Okay.
okay?
That's number
And then
4 in leadership.
have a proven record of managing competing needs and priorities, which I think is essential. Which brings me to another issue. At one of the forums that I was present at, it came to me from another source that superintendent has two possible ways to go. One is a management position, something I never thought about, because I never saw that in the superintendency in the Holyoke Public Schools. And I had talked to, except for Mr. Soto, I've talked to every superintendent since 1973, and I never saw them in a management sense. So I thought it would be important for us to think about do we want a superintendent that is purely management and everything else gets delegated out? Or do we want him to be central for academic leadership? I think that's an important point that was never brought up. And past superintendent said, well, you know, there's no need for the superintendent to have been in a classroom or even have an educational background necessarily, because he's in a management position. So those are things I think you really need to look at and be able to say to the school committee, this is where we're at with this, and I think it's important.
I think that you need a I'm sorry. I got a mic right here. I think that that's accurate, that you need a superintendent who can be both the manager and be strong in school understanding, pedagogy, as it were, understanding what needs to be taught and how it needs to be taught.
Yeah, and is this working?
If you look at the bottom one where I themed comments, that I think that actually did come up multiple times in the community forums and then also in the sessions that were facilitated by the CAT. If you look there where it says those themes, over and over and over again, it was mentioned: a strong educator, somebody with classroom experience, with an understanding of teachers. And another thing that I do just want to pull out, one of the areas that people thought it was really important to do, big concern is teacher burnout, low retention, and that lack of support. So whoever is in that position to have an understanding of how to support teachers and how to really listen to educators, that came up multiple times. And it's represented in those individual comments, but also in these themed comments. So I don't want to lose the management piece, but also a lot of community voices did seem to think that that educational understanding and that experience is an important piece of the job.
I think that part is really critical. Management can be delegated to other resources. For example, there used to be somebody that was in charge of operations. I don't know if there still is somebody like that or not, but those kinds of management decisions can be brought to the superintendent and then played out. But to have him spend his time on that as opposed to educational quality, something gets lost.
I think I'm going to agree with that. I think that having a structure is what HPS as a whole is lacking. So I know that we're only looking at the superintendent at this point, but I think that's I didn't see it in there, but a good characteristic to know how to form a good team. It's something important that I think whoever comes in has a priority, because I think that by what I heard, and I did ask some questions to some of our constituents, is that they feel that positions are given based on individuals, and that was really concerning to me.
I think building a good team is a really good statement.
So I think that was one, and although I see how important budgets are and all that good stuff, I think that, and I didn't see that, so I guess it's a question on forums that I'm going to be asking on format. Did we do surveys on teachers to tell us what they feel a good leader for them should be?
Early on, we had a version of the survey that was for teachers.
Okay, how did that go?
I don't.
I think it went the opposite of what. I think it went the opposite of what we're discussing right now. Like, teachers want somebody who is who has experience in the classroom, who been through steps, teacher, principal, so that part. In conversation that I had heard from teachers in my school, I think that's what they're looking for. That's what they want.
I will say I looked at the research on this, and somebody wrote a whole dissertation on it, and actually that is one of the main things that teachers want in a superintendent, is somebody who's been a teacher. So there is data available through research, and I'm happy to send. I don't know if anybody else wants to read this dissertation, but it was pretty interesting. But that really was something that they wanted, was somebody who was, they felt like they couldn't respect the person if they hadn't been an educator themselves, because they didn't know what they had, like they just didn't understand what the work was.
I want our group to be clear about that, so that, I never. I want us to be clear about that, so that when we go into that, when they go into their search, that that's one of the things that we looked at, as opposed to just saying,
Yeah.
well, you know, so to speak.
So-
Everybody seems to be writing similar comments in the chat. I don't know if somebody's
Can you
monitoring
look at the chat?
Oh, where is my chat?
I think I'll add on to that. I think that that's what I meant.
The screen is
Overall,
weird.
it seems like what we're looking for here, it looks like a manager. And I think a good leader, and I think it came from a group which I didn't know who he was. It was a previous superintendent that left
Thank
to
you, Ellie.
Salem.
We're reading your stuff now.
The one who went to Salem, I think. That what I heard from about him, and I wasn't here. I was in Puerto Rico at that time. What I heard that people were really, and they were still talking about him. And I went on vacation with a retiree from HPS, and she was also talking about it. And what she said is like, when I spoke to Dr. Shrike, they were talking about how he was meeting with all the families in the space in the new region he's working on. And although I appreciate what HPS does now, and I know they really want to get into the community and stuff, it seems like leadership as a whole has a disconnect from the community. And we're pushing that community work to teachers to call, to do this, to do that. But if I just knew that the leader was doing a good job, I think that would have been okay for my family.
Right. So the two comments, or the comments that I'm seeing in the chat are, teachers want an experienced educator as a superintendent. Teachers want superintendents to understand what they go through each and every day. And then in the section that I have up here now, this was, the skills and characteristics are important for a Holyoke superintendent. Don't lose sight of what's going well. Commit to the community for a period of time. Be approachable, solutions-oriented. Understand the value of bilingual education, have a strong vision, learn about the community. Somebody with classroom experience, that goes back to what we were just talking about. Somebody with experience listening to families, a deep understanding of the community. This one came up a couple of times in the forums I was in, that they don't want just somebody who thinks they know about it. They want somebody who really knows about it. They don't want to be platitudes or whatever you want to call it, where they're just being words that are coming out. Interacting with parents, a deep understanding. We did that one. Experienced teacher, communication. Somebody suggests the idea of fireside chats, i.e., a communication with the superintendent. I don't know if fireside is the right idea, but coffee with the superintendent, something like that. Listening to staff and families, independent, want to collaborate, proactive, not just reactive, an active, reflective listener. So.
There's a lot in here when you look, no matter if it's in the community forum feedback or even in the survey feedback.
Yep.
Listening, creating space for conversations, doing that targeted sort of like outreach, and those are things that did come up over and over and over again. Communication isn't just something going out, it's how are you creating space for that communication to come in. So the active listening came up as an important skill. So I think, Frankie, to your point, those are things that you're saying, but I think multiple community members in different roles have also sort of articulated. There's a lot of communication out there, but how much of it are people actually accessing and reading and internalizing right now? And is there a better way of doing that? So it's not just relying on, did the teacher call the family?
Ellie made a point that I think was in the group that I was in as well. Listen to listen and understand, not just respond.
Yeah.
You know, if you have to take a moment to listen, that's hard. Listening's hard, you know? So. Then there was discussion about the strengths of the schools. This is the consolidated version. The dual language program was widely praised. There were some comments about how and why it was put in place, which I understood. That they have some diverse programs, and those are all listed here. That the welcoming school culture and caring staff, the people who are in the system and are committed to the system, clearly are committed to the system. That is absolutely right on. Higher graduation rates, multiple student pathways, stronger representation of teachers of color, and programs that support student voice and restorative justice.
I'm wondering, is there anything else? As you're looking at this and as you're thinking this, one of the things I'm hearing that maybe we want to have some surveys and some potential other spaces where we can continue to get a little bit more outreach to think about these things. It sounds like there are some opportunities that are coming up, and possibly doing some of those things. So I'm happy to one thing I can do is share with the committee again those surveys so that those are out there, and I can keep that survey open, and so if people want to fill out
Yeah.
that virtual form, we
That's a
can
great idea.
continue to collect some of that feedback over the next couple of weeks. But I'm sort of wondering, like, are you going to say something? My question sort of becomes, we can make some recommendations, but we know there's a year, like when we think about that on-ramp in this process, we actually have a little bit more time than we thought we would. So I am wondering, what do we want those next steps to be? What are the opportunities? We're going to report back and say what we found to the school committee, because we wanted to do that by the end of this. We want to show them what we have. But we also want to say, what else are we going to do? What are our next steps as we build up to this?
Right.
And I'll just kind of pass that around.
I think that's a great idea to keep it open and continue engaging with some of the activities that Frankie is mentioning, being one of those youth conference on the 14th, because that will open up possibilities to hear many experiences and opinions that are no longer going to be connected in a compromised way to the school, because many students are going to be graduating. Right now, many voices are not saying what they think because I don't want to risk my graduation or my diploma.
Oh, yep.
I sense in the voices of some teachers that they don't feel they can say openly what they think because there might be consequences and actions taken because expressing what is your truth. So for many, once the pressure of being graduation and moving into the next school year, also come July 1st is going to be the transition, not only for the temporary condition return to local control of the schools, but also the new commissioner for DC.
Yeah.
So a lot of things are going to change, and it's going to be important to see how those voices and those opinions can express more openly, having a clear view of the things that are going to be happening come July 1st, so we can have a more solid reaffirmation of what we have so far, but also many other things that possibly haven't been said yet.
So let me try to kind of reflect what you're saying. If I'm hearing you right, one of the recommendations should be to continue the process of asking questions and exploring roles and that whole piece. Just because this part of this is ending with the report going back to them, that there needs to be a way to keep this open and this communication going, especially as we enter the new year and the real search for a superintendent begins. Mm-hmm. Okay.
My question is there a timeline that we have for us to do the work that we need to do?
Well, technically, there's two parts to this. Technically, the money that was set aside by the city for us to do this work expires June 30th.
Okay.
But there are two pieces to that going forward. One is the point that we just discussed, which is the recommendation to keep the dialogue going and keep the communication open. And two, the process for the CAT, for the Community Advisory Team, needs to keep going. Whether we're sitting here or not, it needs to keep going. So some of this is going to be, how do we move in that direction to allow some ownership of the CAT to occur amongst the group of people that are involved with it to keep it moving. If we can, if there's more support we can get from the city to keep us involved, we're happy to do it, but we only have so much funding there to be able to go so far.
I would just say sorry, Eric.
That's okay.
In the slides that we did for the community forum, there is like a timeline for the rough sort of like timestamps for that superintendent search. It's very flexible, but it is something that you could use to sort of backwards plan and decide if there are other opportunities, like when you might plan those things, how you might do some of those things, so you can see the longer term game. Oh,
There it is.
printed. That's my Canvas skills right there.
So I think Ellie had a couple comments in response to people, so I don't know if we want to read hers first, and then I could talk, just to keep the.
Ellie said we're going to compete with other local area districts who are searching for superintendents. That is true. And the school committee is looking for this information now so we can create a vision and determine the requirements for the superintendent's role. Yes. This is informing that process, correct?
So I think what I was going to say was thinking about this idea of voices not being heard or not being afraid to speak. That seems like something that we should avoid in the future. So thinking about what might be ways to think about having a leader who, and a team or whatever, who doesn't, I don't know how you would put this in a job search, like don't hold grudges or don't be retaliatory or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that that's specific, but just like, to me, that's something that if we have an opportunity to ensure that this doesn't happen again, what can we do to proactively seek that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we have a comment from our friend. It says, acknowledge that some constituents will fear reprisal if they say something negative. Yes. Unfortunately, the tenor of society has changed from when we started to where we're at, like it or not.
I think to question, I think it was HPS we're at, right? It was strengths of HPS. I did want to add that I didn't see on there that their focus this year, maybe I'm biased because I see it a lot in my center, is that they had a big focus on attendance, and that's really important for the school district because that's how you get money. So it makes sense that was a really big focus that Anthony did and Mr. Mogel really pushed, and what they started doing was that they're holding monthly meetings at our community center, and we can have either people come in or, but we get to know what they're doing, which is really good, and we have input on the letters that are being sent out, and that, I think, strategy really works well to make it more transparent and people have more of a goal for it. And then to answer your question, Gabriel, I think you said, what are some next steps? I think that transparency is key. So I understand that people, I know that this happens a lot with politicians, but I'm going to bring it up here. I think that it's important that a part of the interview process is done in community. I think that coming to Holyoke Media, holding a forum, going into centers like Nairobi Center, then downtown, in the flats. It's in the flat community building might be a good idea as well. And then lastly, we can hold them as well. But I also think like questions that are already submitted by the community, where they can submit them there and we'll vet them, and then they have to answer those questions in front of them. But I think having a mic and asking the questions sometimes can feel really overwhelming for individuals.
See, we're in. I'm just making this as a statement. This process has never been done before to get out of receivership, so we have the opportunity to kind of frame it however we want, which I think is great. So I think points like that and points like Ellie just made and all these various pieces come together, the transparency piece, the communication piece, all those things add up to nothing in secret, right? Let's get this done in a way that is strong and for Holyoke.
And structure. So I think that before I pass the mic on, I think that we need to also think about breaking it up a little bit. We're talking about community forum, a youth forum, and a teachers forum, right? Just making it very divided. And although they're all a part of the community, it's different questions that are going to come up as different views of individuals. And one of them is my boss, the other one is the one running the schools, and then the other one's the one that's serving my kids. So being really understanding that whatever they say needs to be taken into account. And my biggest worry with this process is, and again, it's just, I have politics in my mind right now, but my biggest worry in this process is that individuals, our names are already being thrown out, and that concerns me. And the availability, something that I didn't see in the survey was, how do you guys feel about only hiring people who live in Holyoke, and then you're cutting up individuals who maybe can move into the district? And I think those are my biggest worries overall. Is it going to be a fair process? I do know a couple people on the committee, and I'm really grateful that they are on there now, but I do feel like they might be a little bit of bias, and I think people need to show their skills before they're selected.
How does this group feel about that idea? About somebody from the city?
In a minute.
Okay.
I think it's important, I don't know if this thing's working or not, that we don't hold somebody's feet to the fire, that we ask questions that eventually are going to come back to haunt this person and could be detrimental. Once you're at a forum like this and you're talking to people, it's hard to keep all of your things straight, unless you're a politician, of course, in which case, you know, you can say anything and take it back, I guess.
Or not.
Or not. But I think that's important. And what was the backup question you had?
No, there was just some, Ellie just put in the search that there will be a search. I do not believe there has been discussion about local, regional, or national.
I think the other question was any next steps.
Oh, well, I would like to continue in this capacity, but to your point, it's important to get out to the community more, for us people to go out with ideas and have people react to them, not in a negative way, but just throw things
So-
out and have that.
I'm just thinking along the lines of, if I'm reflecting this right, creating some sort of structure for this committee to keep going.
And who can support with that?
And whatever that means, right, whatever that means. Because it'll have to be Holyoke-led, engaged at Holyoke's level, et cetera. But I think it's an important piece of the puzzle.
There's another comment.
Oh,
Yeah, what
she
it-
says, the plan is for CAT to continue. I'm not sure how that will work.
Right. Like, and just,
Read. Yes. You're welcome. So I think to your point, like, I agree, like, sort of, I don't think that the forum should be something where we're putting people, like, on the spot, and that's why I appreciate sort of the idea of, like, people submitting questions beforehand. And I also think that different people present differently. We just, in my work, we just did a search for a dean, which is a national kind of search, and we ended up with somebody who actually said, he's like, I'm not charismatic. Like, he's like, I'm not gonna wow you in my, like, interview and stuff. And he did not, but he's an amazing leader. So I think also thinking about, like, what are, like, again, like, what are the characteristics we want in a superintendent? And I think you might have somebody who really wows people
Yep.
and who can work a room really well, but I think we need to be careful to not be wowed by that and think about, like, what, you know. So that was one point. I think, two, thinking about the community, I do think obviously it's super important to think about sort of how do we make sure that we engage everybody, and, you know, obviously in Lhasa and the Flats. But I also just think also across the whole city, because I know that there are many families who have opted out of the school district for a myriad of reasons. And so, and this is something that I think the school district should pay attention to, the fact that we lose that much money every year to kids to neighborhood communities, like, that's a problem. So I think this might be an opportunity to bring people back in. Maybe this is my naive try, but just think about, like, how do we think
should go
about
in the areas of
engaging
improvement.
everybody, right? And so how do we think about the Highlands everywhere across Holyoke? So that was my second. And then my third point is that I think and I've said this before, I don't think the person has to be from Holyoke, and maybe shouldn't even be from Holyoke. How many people in Holyoke have a superintendent's license?
right.
4 of them maybe, and they're already in the school district. So I think we need to be open to somebody who's willing to come here and who's willing to learn and who's willing to commit for a certain amount of time. I think I said this in the forum, superintendents stay in districts 5 to 7 years. Like, this is not a career position for anybody.
Right.
So I think somebody who's willing to move here, and yeah, who's like, okay, I'm gonna make the commitment to be in this community, but I don't think we should limit ourselves to who
And
lives here.
I'll echo that in reviewing all of the data and all the perspectives. People saying someone who has an understanding and is willing to listen to the Holyoke community is really important. Someone who can commit a certain amount of time, so it's not just 1 year and done or 2 years and done. Someone who's willing to stick around for a while, but not. I don't think it came up like it has to be somebody from the community necessarily. It was.
There was, in one of the groups, there was
Yeah.
discussion about Holyoke.
Like, yeah, having experience, maybe, yeah. I interpreted a lot of it when I was looking at the data, though, as someone who's willing to get to know the community. This is a very unique community. It's a vibrant community. Understanding the history of the community is really important to thinking about, like, both how do we keep the good practices that are there, but also where there are opportunities to go. There were also data points that said maybe it would be good to have somebody who has experience outside of this to bring in new ideas, and that's a perspective that was also included at different points as well.
Because I been involved in different teams and working in here, and I hear the teachers, a lot of them feel like we should be looking for somebody out of district, because this is what they said. Everyone in Holyoke know each other, and sometimes they put people because they know them, and they don't. And they view this as not being fair for people that would like to come here and work for our city. So I think we should listen to these people, because the teachers, they have a lot to say, but sometimes they feel like they have to hold back because of the consequences. So
I'll share this, that one of the things I've learned over the past whatever number of months it's been is that of course Holyoke is a city, but Holyoke is also a big town with a lot of different neighborhoods and connections, and just going around town, people connect to each other. Oh, you're that guy, etc. So I think that's a strength to really be used on your behalf, without a doubt. I have to go stick 3/4 in my car meter so I don't get a friendly ticket from the city of Holyoke.
Yeah.
I'm good?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, comment.
Can you?
4:30?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
yes.
So I just want to share, as a school committee member here, I'm sorry I can't be there, but I have to leave at 5 for another commitment. But the thing is, I want to assure everyone that as a school committee member, that we want the best person to run our schools. We want the best candidate. We know that pretty much everyone in the state's going to be looking at us, because we're going to be the first district coming out of receivership. We're going to be the first ones going through this process. And that not only, our first job is to make sure we do it well for our city, but the second job, we are very thoughtful about every decision we make has a ripple effect to every other community who is currently in receivership. And that's a very large burden on our shoulders, but one we are absolutely hoisting up high, because we know our city, and we know our educators, our families, we all want the best for our district. And I assure you, it is not going to be simply we all like this person, let's hire them. I can assure you that will not happen. There has been not even a hint of that. And I'm going to be clear that, I think some of us can think about candidates who might put their names in, but I want to assure you the key word is candidate. So I just wanted to just throw that out there.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
That was great, Ellie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
You're welcome.
I hope she heard the whole thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody said thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. We haven't done this in 10 years. This next year is going to be a significant endeavor between the schools, the administration, the interim superintendent, the school committee, because, it's no longer, whatever the receiver says goes. And so it's going to be a huge learning process, for example, the simplest things, such as writing a form to take a field trip. it's going to have to be approved by the school committee now if it's, out of state, overnight, or international. Things like that have not been happening, and these little tiny things are going to be some big clunks along the way. And, we know this, and, we as a school committee and administration we want to make sure it's the smoothest transition possible back to local control, because again, all eyes are watching us.
Yep.
There's another comment here.
Is there any documentation from before when we were not in receivership that you guys can refer to, just to take the things that work out well, and just to add new things that we want to make sure that need to be there?
So are you saying from things that went well and things? Well, I think it's hard for us to say. We all know, and we can see in these things that are going well now. I think 10 years in education is a very long time. There's been significant changes. Even from basics like reading levels at what grade. There's been significant shifts. So I think what we want to take is everything we've learned on this path, everything we have, for good or bad, we've learned a lot through receivership, and we want to make sure that we don't get in the position again to where the state's going to say, all right, we're taking you back again. Because I want to be very honest. I mean, they can do that. They did it the first time, and we all fought it, and we're still taking over. I think we need to recognize what's working well and continue building on it. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
What I meant to say is, when we were out of receivership before these 10 years, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, is there any documentation that the school committee can refer to see, oh, this is the thing we were doing before receivership, because what I can perceive is this sense of, I don't know what is going to happen, why we're going to do this. So having a documentation that says how things were before is kind of a base to help us, how to navigate through this and to build a good foundation. But having a guidance how things were done before we were into receivership. I think that was my question. I don't know if that clarifies what I'm asking.
No, I think that's a great question. So we have a couple pieces. First of all, there's policies that as a school committee and a school district we follow. They're the overarching policies of how we deal with everything from, voting in school committee members to field trips, to attendance policies, to admissions policies, all of those pieces. And so they have not been looked at before now because we were in receivership for 10 years. And we are looking at every single policy that we have as a district so that we can ensure that they are correct. They are meeting the legal requirements because some of the legal requirements have changed. And that is what's going to guide us through this process, because when we're not in receivership, how we run schools overall is through school committee policies. Yep. The school committee makes policies, administration creates procedures based upon that. And we do have, we have minutes from ever for, from school committee meetings from, 15, 20 years ago, I assure you, that can be referenced. And I believe we have a couple school committee members who were on previously. And so we can look to the past to help guide us as to what was working well within our district at that time, to help gear us moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. That was well answered. So my other question is, have you guys considered, I don't know, probably us should do it too, look at any other districts around that are out of receivership already and have the same characteristics, some of the characteristics that the Holy Student has, to actually see how they do things. It could be like a good way to go and give us some guidance and how to, like with pathway we should take to do this well.
Right. No, I agree with you. The sad news is that districts that are like us are in receivership. Interestingly enough, if you dive into receivership, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, you're going to find low-income bilingual communities, because it is challenging, and those are the communities that have been taken over.
So if you look,
Sorry.
So if you look historically, Chelsea's school system out in the Boston area was taken over by Boston University long time ago, and they have not ever exited from receivership. There's never been any data coming out of Chelsea, what the problems are or what happens, but they are among the lowest in the state, and receivership and BU really didn't meet any of their needs as far as I can figure.
Right.
And just, I'll throw my 2 cents in here, which is I'm wearing a different hat. I used to be chair of our school committee in Belchertown. Now, I know Belchertown is not Holyoke. I'm not trying to say that. But the primary role of the school committee is pretty straightforward. It's the budget, it's setting school policy, and it's the hiring of a superintendent. So amongst all that comes all the other responsibilities of operationalizing the district and everything else. So you could almost go to almost any district of decent size and figure out how they have different policies for doing different things and get good information. But there are some other districts, like looking at the Worcester School District might be a place to look, et cetera. So I think the recommendation that needs to come out of this group is to take that initiative to visit and talk with other districts, even if they are in receivership, at least understand what they're facing. But I think that, I think also, as we kind of ended earlier, this is a real opportunity for Holyoke to define some things that nobody else has defined in a way that'll work for Holyoke. So, but again, the primary responsibilities are setting the curriculum, working with the setting curriculum, hiring the superintendent, and the budget. And from everything else, providing education is the overriding topic, but that's where everything comes from, and that's where the power of the school committee comes from as well.
And just to clarify, policy, not curriculum.
Right.
Right.
Policy.
I think I just want to add,
Right.
I think all of us have been on a few boards or some type of committee. And I think the most successful committees that I've been on or boards that I've been on, they're really transparent in what needs to get done. And I think to your point is I do it for my board in red, green, yellow, yeah, right? So they know, because most of them don't know budget, or they're new, they're from the community, they've never worked in this before, it's their first board. And I think that's what it's gonna make this community feel a little bit better about what's going on. We don't understand how you guys make decisions. We don't understand what that segment's going to be when you switch from receivership to there, because I know they're going to have some type of hold on you guys still at that first year or first few years. So for me, it's always been helpful to communicate what the goals are and where are we in those goals. Are we yellow? Are we red? Are we green? Are we making the strides we need to get to that level so we understand? And I think that that's something that we're lacking within the school department, and understanding that, yes, you guys are making the decisions, but you're making decisions for this community and for your staff as well. And where are we in those specific spaces? And I think understanding what got you into receivership and making sure that that's on there, understanding that you don't want to be in the red in those specific areas, is what I think concerns me the most. Understanding that you're only looking at the budget policy and reviewing those forms and things that come in. Sorry?
No, we look at much more.
Okay, well, the points that he just made on what you review is not the points that we're looking at as a community to ensure that this individual is doing their job.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, do we get the points that we know got us into receivership, and are we on the right track to ensure that we're not turning back to those specific points by looking at the minutes?
I think you're both saying the same thing here. So Yeah.
Right, I agree. So we do get more information from that. So I just, overarching, those are our core pieces. But we do get, updates on attendance. We get updates on graduation rates and where people are with that, dropouts. We get updates on how students are doing with their reading levels. Let's be honest, that's probably the core of what got us into this, is our students' inability to meet basic reading levels. And, it continues to be a challenge. I'm not going to lie. And so we do get that data, and it's shared out at school committee meetings. And we do discuss it, and we ask about it. We, try to get as much information as we can.
Ellie, quick question. Does the committee, this might be something we want to add in there, and I just do this for my interviews. I don't know if it's a best practice that other individuals do, but when I'm going to hire a new manager, for example, I make them do a budget. Like, I have a budget scenario for them, do this budget for me, and then there is how I know. Do you know Excel for real, or are you just telling me you know Excel? Do you know these materials? So when it comes to the interview process, is there an activity or something that you have in this? So for example, I know that many people love the dual language program, which I love. My partner's in it, so I'm biased. But I do understand that individuals who study their primary language first and then go into a secondary language like English tend to learn better. And I learned that in college because I went to school in Holyoke for my life, and then I went to college in Puerto Rico, and I did not know like how effective it is when you learn in your own language. So like taking those specific, your numbers or your data on that, presenting that to the individual and just saying, how would you improve this? And then having that written back to you, it's what I'm at, like not just said back to you, like really written back in steps, so you know that that individual has that knowledge you want, whether that be community or data points that you want to give them. Do you do that now in your interview process?
So I can tell you we haven't interviewed a superintendent, so no, we haven't. We haven't had the opportunity to have that experience in 10 years as a district. So no, we don't. Is that something that's good interview skills? Yes. I have, almost 20 years experiences in human resources, which can add, to my qualifications. But we have not developed the search. We're waiting for this information,
Right.
as a school committee, before we can even start developing the search, because we're looking for what qualities we're looking for.
That's right.
We as a school committee don't just want to make assumptions. That's why we put this in place, so we could get input, so we know what our community's feeling, what's important, and not just from our perspective. So that's what so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this information, we're going to synthesize it, and then we're going to develop a job description.
Yep.
And then we're going to put it out, and we will decide. My dog's going to bark in a minute. Sorry, and then we'll decide: are we going to, are we going to go regional? Are we going to go, national? How big of a search are we going to do? And I'm going to be honest, I don't know what makes those decisions, because I haven't done this before.
Ellie.
So we are going to be probably hiring an organization to help us with our search. There are organizations out there who do this day in, day out.
Yep.
This is what they do. This is their strength. And I'm sure we will be, looking to work with someone to assist us in this process, because, again, this is not something as a school committee we've done in 10 years, and we want to make sure we do it well.
Ellie.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Ellie,
What I wonder is the information that we are assembling, when this company comes in to help you with the search, are they going to look at this and take some information, or are they going to recreate the wheel? So to speak?
No, we're using this information. We would not have asked you to put your time, hard work, and effort, and we would have not asked the community for their input if we did not value it. And that's what I'm going to stand behind. I value it, and I will be using this information as I move forward, and I'm sure others on the school committee will as well.
Great.
Ellie, I've got two
Thank you
things.
for that, Ellie.
One, you've really made this meeting work well this evening, afternoon, by being here, and we really, really appreciate that. And two, yeah, it's going to be a journey to get from here to where the point that there's a superintendent. There are going to be a lot of things to be considered, and we appreciate your honesty in this moment in conveying the information you have, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact is, we don't know what we don't know. I mean, I think Mr. Sheehan was on school committee, and maybe even Mr. Garcia, our mayor, when we did a search. Mr. Collmore, I'm not sure, and Mr. Wellahan is stepping down, and I'm not sure he was part of any search group. So we're you know, a lot of us are novices when it comes to this search, but we know how not important, how critical this role is moving forward. We need someone who is knowledgeable, trustworthy, honest, who will listen to our community. He will take that information into consideration, and if he doesn't agree with it, will come, he or she, I'm using he in generic terms, I want to let you know, they will share as to why they made their decision.
Right.
In a different way. I mean, that's what, you know, pieces that I'm looking for.
I'm just going to repeat back some of the things that I'm hearing because I'm capturing notes right now, and so I want to make sure that I'm collecting this as best I can. We're going to, in terms of next steps, we want to keep the survey open a little bit longer. We want to gather some of those additional responses. We'll collect some student input as well, and we'll make sure that any of that information we gather, we do share back with the school committee, and so that there's a clear process there, because we're seeing some perspectives and opportunities. Specifically around graduating students and some of those perspectives. We're really saying transparency is important in this process. There's a recommendation for part of the interview process to be done in community, so a community forum, a student forum, a teacher forum, but to sort of like vet some of those questions and give a little bit of guardrails to that, because we don't want someone to come in and feel immediately like sort of like attacked, right? Not that that would happen, but and then somebody's laughing. We want to think about how we're engaging with families who are maybe out of the school system right now, so consider some of those other perspectives. And then I'm hearing it's sort of like part of this conversation is around, somebody's giving a thumbs up to whatever went in that chat. The school committee, in terms of the school committee, one of the things that has surfaced is, in terms of those priorities, what's the process for sharing some of those things transparently? Because there are going to be a lot of like balls in the air over the next couple weeks, months, years. Mm-hmm. The idea of reviewing every single policy, because 10 years ago was the last time you had to do it. First of all, I commend you, but second of all, like, having systems and transparently sharing that, just thinking on the front end, I'm sure you already are, but like, holy goodness, that is a lot. Oh, see, you need to have like a little heat map that shows, like, that's huge. That is to be commended. And then like just thinking about like, what are those ways you can share those things back with the community so that the community can see all of the work that you're doing. That's tremendous. 3/4 of the way through, that is tremendous, and to be really celebrated. And then I heard this. I've been on policy subcommittees, and that is like a lot. The other thing though that I did hear that I don't want to lose, whoever it is that's coming into this position, partnerships and relationships with other superintendents is going to be really important in navigating some of those processes. And so I'm thinking a little bit just about how do you help support your superintendent with that. And I work with a lot of superintendents, and it is an isolating field to be in, period, but to be in such a unique position in that field, having other people to sort of support and go to with questions is going to be really important. And Eric, I know you said that. And then, and then there was one more thing I heard that I wanted to make sure. you are going to use all of this information, you're synthesizing it, and then you're going to use this information to help draft that job description. So these comments are going to help to articulate and define what it is that Holyoke School is looking for.
There are two parts to that this will be used to inform or help define, as you said. And the other thing that came up a couple of times was how they're going to keep this committee, the CAT, alive after June 30th and going forward. And that's going to require commitment on a number of people's part to define a chair, vice chair, whatever, and establish it as a committee that is integrated into the process with the school committee, supportive, and yet taking on different pieces as they come along. So
I think Ellie just wrote that the superintendents have a group that they belong to, and I actually
Yes.
do think that the local ones meet once or Friday, once a month or something, Delaney House.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, there is local and state as well, and
You're in the wrong
every
gig.
year I was going to say, every year there's a conference for school committee as well as superintendents, so you get to meet everyone from around, the state. For those that attend, not everyone on the school committee attends because that's too much of a cost. Just going to let you know.
yeah, I went to those when I was on school committee. Those are fun.
Yeah.
So I think one thing.
I have to go because I'm a coach in my my third life. So I'm going to go. I have to go coach my little ones. But if you need anything, please reach out to me. I'm at ewilson@hps.holyoke.ma.us. Feel free to reach out. I'll tell you what I can tell you, and if I can't tell you, I'll tell you I can't tell you. Some things we can't share. Some things we can. And I'm pretty much a straight shooter, so I'll let you know.
We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, and thank you all. I really appreciate your effort for doing this and your commitment with, staying through with this. It's a lot, and your voices are valued. So I just want to make sure you all realize that.
Cool.
All right, thank you, and please, I don't know who was it, but please get some student feedback. That's really important.
Yep.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
If you need me to present anything to the school committee, I'll be happy to. Bye.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care.
I want to follow up on that last point after we're not shutting down. She just said.
We don't need a mic. There's somebody there, right?
Is there anybody?
Recording, so.
Oh, okay.
Holyoke
sorry.
Media and me twice. So yeah.
So I had 2 points. One was thinking about maybe it's too late for this process, but for another process is just thinking about sort of like special. I think of it as like special interest groups, and to have people meet around those things. So thinking about people who are in the dual language program, people who are in special ed. Like I think there are groups of families who sort of have really specific needs, and it might be. People might feel more comfortable sharing those needs in sort of a space where they feel like others can understand or validate, or they can bounce off of each other. And so just thinking about, like, it might be useful for even the superintendent interview to meet with, like, what are our two, I think special ed, I'm surprised it didn't come up more often, quite frankly, given what I hear from families who have children with IEPs and 504s and how not great the experience is. So I'm actually surprised that didn't come up more, but I do think that having a superintendent who has an understanding of special ed and who has an understanding of the intersection between special ed and emergent bilinguals, which is and dual language and special ed. So I think those might be things. The other thing is that she said not sure about doing a regional or national search, and I think that given the ban on bilingual education in Massachusetts, I actually think a national search, if bilingual education is something that we really want to value or we want to sort of grow, I think a national search is needed. You need somebody from a state that has had a robust bilingual education for years, unlike Massachusetts or Arizona or California. And so I think that's something that would be my plug for a national search.
I think a solution to next steps and making sure that we feel that we're being heard is once they do the job description, bringing it back to this group and us voting and making sure that our voices are heard there. And then I think that also sharing data with the candidates once they do decide who the candidates are. And I think bilingual education is very important. Once you look at the numbers in HPS, and I, again, bias my partner is a part of all that. But I've heard from the group, because he works all day, he's just working till 9 or 10 p.m. So I have a different side for the school department in my head. But I think that giving them that data and understanding the importance of having that dual language program, and I think you had a really good point. Giving them, when I say giving them scenarios, one of the scenarios I think should be the scenario you kind of put forward earlier, which was how do we get our kids back who decided to not go to the schools here in Holyoke, and seeing what strategies they would have to have that happen. I think it's really important. But I think my main point was job description should be coming back to us.
Yeah, I can't guarantee anything, but I think it's
So you're saying that we should have already set in place different scenarios that we're struggling with, prepare already for the person, not something random, but something specific that we want to target to see how ready they are. Perfect.
I think you made a good point. Which
Yeah,
was
love that.
Individuals are really good at interviews. Some may not be. Some have strengths. Some don't.
Well, I think-
What I know is if you have the skill set.
if they're hiring who I think they're hiring to do the search, they're going to do a really thorough job. So there's a couple of firms and they both do a really good job.
Yeah, but I agree. It's good to see, and actually to the point of when you were asking a candidate to actually make a budget, how a superintendent will make some decisions based on scenarios that are real,
Yep.
way too real for our community. Thinking about special education, thinking about IEPs, thinking about transportation limitations, thinking about students who are coming overnight from Puerto Rico or other communities in other countries. And they need that assistance.
This committee could do though, like in addition to looking at the job description, this committee could say, what are the 3 scenarios that would make sense knowing the community need that we want to put out there? So you could come up with examples of what those scenarios might be.
Because it's not only the solutions being presented, it's the level of empathy and connection
Yeah.
with the impact these decisions are going to have in Holyoke. Because they come, make decisions, they go, and they don't care for whatever happened here. The problem is that those decisions remain, and a couple of generations were impacted because of those bad decisions.
The other thing I wanted to reassure you and everybody else that's been on this committee is that this report is not going to look like a really big, thick, giant, meaty report that lands on somebody's desk and just stays there. This is going to be an action-oriented thing that lists the recommendations, lists the stuff. It's not going to look like the prim and proper type thing. It's going to be meant to be operational and operationalized. So that's the way we're going to write it, with that intent. And so the questions we raise will be important in terms of structuring things going forward.
So how are we, it's getting late, how are we going forward with this?
We're going to have to take a shot at a draft and then send it back to all of you, and then there's going to be a meeting with the school committee, and so there's going to be this whole sequence of things that need to happen. So we're going to do our best to meet the timeline of June 30th and line up getting this group together hopefully one more time, and then going to the school committee with what we've got in terms of draft.
So when is going to be our next meeting?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, so thinking on dates for our next meeting.
Be something that everybody had already agreed on.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll move back to Monday nights.
The only reason we did Wednesday, because we wanted to get it before the school committee meeting, and Monday was a holiday, so we
Yeah.
couldn't do it this Monday. That's the only reason but we lost people because of it.
I think we also have a few questions we want to answer today before we go, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that
When I'm thinking, what questions are you looking at? Are you?
Oh, no,
Oh.
I just, the agenda had
Yeah.
a few questions.
So, yep, 3. Yep, what recommendations do you want
We've
to
kind of started
make?
on the recommendation path a little bit.
Yeah, so what I think though, being just like really clear, we've talked through it a lot. I've taken a couple of notes about both process and sort of, so for process, because that's not something that was reflected anywhere in the data
I have
we
an idea.
collected. So for process, I captured collecting work samples. For example, a sample budget is going to be really important. Having them talk through scenarios that are relevant to this community is going to be really important. Recommendation that there's a community component to that process for an interview that is those 3 pieces with those filtered questions. And then I have up here just like a couple notes, but these are really messy. One of the things that I did capture was there's a theme about how important communication is, the listening, but then I also captured something that you said around team building, like this person isn't going to be able to operate alone, so we want somebody who's a team player, who's going to be able to build in the team piece there, the collaborative environment. It's really important to meet with families and build relationships within the community, so having an understanding of how to hold space for people came up here. Experience as an educator, I think that did come up. I marked it as specifically something that's important to educators that are in this district, but it did seem to be a theme that came up. Listening is an important skill that I think I captured that in multiple places, but that seemed to come up over and over again, the ability to listen and hold space.
Transparency was one.
Transparency, and then interested in outside perspectives, like somebody who has outside perspectives and experiences. We were saying there's an interest in that. Like,
Here's kind of what I'm thinking, which is that we're going to take a shot at a first draft of this thing. It's going to go out to the entire group because that's the right way to do it. But you six have a different perspective than everybody else because you were at this meeting to be able to see things and hear things. So if you have the time to take a look and do a little bit of editing and critiquing of it, by all means do, because that would be a good feedback piece.
Okay. So what do you have for a date for the next meeting?
That's what I was trying to figure out. You know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to call, is it Irene? Yes. And get in and just figure out what the school committee calendar is and then organize what we got to do around that. So I'll be able to figure that out tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about qualities. I know we talked about it in the last meeting. I
Yep.
just wanted to add, I don't know the exact word, so you guys might, but I think stuff more related to our staff, I think it's important. Staff turnover in the Holyoke Public Schools is terrible. I think that we lose a lot of qualified teachers that I personally met that I was like, I can't believe they let you go type of thing. So I don't know how to put that into words, but if y'all do, I think that that's something important that we need to have in these bullets because I don't see that anywhere.
Staff retention.
Not only staff retention, I think that what's been really good for my organization is that I focus a lot on community, but I focus on work-life balance a lot. I focus on staff improvements of professional development. But what does that look like in such a big company? I can't say that. I don't know.
So like job satisfaction.
Culturally speaking, in terms of school culture, it's really important to retain teachers because the history of those teachers goes on with students.
Yep.
And if you don't have that, teachers come and go, and then, a whole new thing has to be established. And that is really hard on kids.
Right.
Routine is really important to kids. They want to be able to walk into school and say, oh, Miss Smith, I had her last year. She was great, or she was
My wife,
whatever.
who teaches in Belchton, got a note from a kid she had 10 years ago thanking her for
I still
teaching her
talk to my
then.
fifth grade teacher.
Yeah, so, there is connections that get made.
I think it's here and here.
I believe we mentioned when we were gathering the information that something that the school district did well was giving the teachers the opportunity to have a personal day like throughout the year, and that was really good for the teachers. Like they can have like a mental debrief day, whatever they call it, where they have just a free day, no school, no student. It was no school, and I believe there was like 4 days of those throughout the year, and that's something that should come back for the benefit of the teachers.
Professional development stuff.
Just captured that as like focus on job
Yeah,
satisfaction.
It wasn't a PD day.
Oh, it wasn't.
It was like a work
just-
in your classroom.
Oh, I see, a personal day. I
day,
see, okay,
yeah.
got it.
So I got that as
I
like
think that's a great idea.
job satisfaction for staff, personal day, professional learning, work-life balance, teacher
There you go.
retention is a real priority.
So I did, with some other parents, we did a survey of teachers last year around teacher retention. And so I have that data. But among them, I think teachers felt like there was too much of people telling them what to do and very little respect for their expertise and very little recognition of their skills and what they brought. And so I know that there are these attempts to like spotlight particular people. and that's great, but that doesn't, not everybody, it's like the student of the month. Not everybody can be student of the month. I've got lots of opinions. But just thinking about, I think teachers just felt like the way that the policies were coming down, it was like, now you need to do this, now you need to do that. And here's a PD, this company that we brought in that we spent thousands of dollars on, and they're going to teach you how to teach reading. And so teachers just felt like completely underappreciated by the administration. And so I think just thinking about, how do you think about like morale and support and just even, walking through and being like, I don't know. I think somebody there, it requires a level of humility, I think, on the part of the administration to be able to walk halls and to see what teachers are doing and doing it in a way that's authentic and not just like. So I appreciate that. And that was definitely something that teachers talked about as reasons for leaving. Like, I'm going to go.
Share that survey with me. Do you think I could roll some of that survey up in this report too, or do you think that would be inappropriate? I just feel like that could be an interesting, since we don't have necessarily.
Let me talk to the other people who wrote the survey with me.
No,
and see how we can,
I'll don't, if you can't, that's okay, but like.
I can cherry pick things out.
That would be great, maybe, if you
Or
have
the
a couple
questions.
points.
Maybe we just ask them again. I think that
Yeah, ask them again. Second.
I think to your point, I had a teacher who I played volleyball with who I loved. She was amazing. She was from Spain. She was here for a few years, and the only reason she left was because the educational system here was the curriculum does not let teachers teach. So be individuals, really teaching your own words. And it's really hard for me to think, because I'm not in the schools, to think this happens, because I still have a relationship with my 5th grade teacher. Like, she took me to Upward Bound. She put me in sports. Like, my relationship with her was huge. And if somebody would have invaded in that and say you can't do that, I would never got into college, to be honest, right? I never would have been who I am today. So I think that to your personal day or day off, I think also giving teachers the availability, giving a couple of days a year where you teach the way you want to. I think it's also really important. And I'm not saying, I don't think this is going to do a lot for the curriculum, but it's going to do a lot for morale and allowing them to have a day to teach the kids, a couple of days a year for them to teach the kids the way they want to, whether that be going outside, walking around in the hallway, whatever that looks like. And I think that's what I mean when I say we want somebody who is really going to look out for teachers, because when we're doing this, although I'm pro-community, everybody who knows me knows, I do think that if your staff isn't happy, and I think that's something that I love about the work I do, is that I get to support, and the way I do that is that they come into the conversation. When I change something, they tell me they want to change. If I'm writing a grant, I'm sitting down with all of my staff and saying, like, how can we do this, and what are good ideas to put in this grant? So I think that's a big part. And again, I did not see that in here at all. And
Captured that is honor, autonomy. It did come up in a couple of places, like what you're describing came up, and I think it was sort of couched under testing. It's like all we do is teach to the test, and so we don't have room to be autonomous, to be flexible, to necessarily be responsive the way we would want to. And so I think, but it didn't pull as a theme.
I will also add that I think we need something on when I'm pushing my board to do a 360 360 evaluation on me, and I know that sounds terrible. It's scary for me to do, but I think it's important for them to know when they evaluate you, they evaluate your partners you work with, the teacher. They would evaluate the partners, teachers, students, and then that comes all in one evaluation to evaluate your job and the way you're doing.
Yeah, above, below, and to the sides. So
Share it back to the board or the committee, and then you
now some people.
your goals and professional.
So I think we need that. And not on, I mean, I don't want to say, I'm not putting Anthony on the spot if he's hearing this, but I think that we need that to get done before you decide to do an interview and understand what's working and what's not. And it needs to be anonymous, and it needs to really focus. And you're going to hear horrible things, but I think you need a professional to be able to weed out what works and what doesn't work. And I think that if you do that, I think you're going to have really good feedback on what you need to do to hire a good superintendent at the end of the day.
I think that teacher retention has come up in over and over because on the forum that we had at Kelly School, that was one of the first things they mentioned, and also that's something that the teachers are fighting for too. So to come up with a system that teachers can stay here in Holyoke and not use Holyoke as a stepping stone to get some experience and then leave after they get whatever they get from here, certifications, and then they go to different districts. So they're fighting for that. So that's important, I think, and it has been mentioned in every meeting and every forum that I've been.
That's
And I'm
right.
seeing a lot of these things are coming up under the
Yes,
themes, but
yeah.
maybe what we can do is even clean out some of these
Yeah.
other pieces
Yep.
to really focus on, like this teacher retention being important. Like, let's really hone in on those things that I'm hearing come up here that I also captured in the notes here.
So, out of respect for everybody's time, it is 5:30. So I'm just making sure that if you want to keep talking, we're fine. But if you need to get going, we respect that as well, because it is. So
I am wondering, so for concrete next steps, Eric, what
Yeah.
you're saying is we'll take this and clean it up. We'll email it back to everybody. We're going to have another meeting on a Monday
yep.
when is the school committee meeting?
I don't have that in front of me right now.
So that's the thing that we did make a commitment to share with the school committee some
Right.
of our findings. And so I think,
It can be as part of the timeline. That's not a problem. So as whatever we have, I'll present.
so this is Eric the person that is presenting to the school committee, or do
Oh, yeah,
we,
yeah.
I think that's a question that I have is who wants, like, once we have some of the recommendations put out, part of me is like, I don't know if it's Eric and I presenting at the school committee, or if we want community advisory team voices there to sort of say, here's where we are and here's what we're thinking of doing next. I want to open that up to this group.
We should all go.
I'll go if you all go.
Yeah. I think that would be, so maybe if we can get a commitment of people to go and then to say,
Depending on the date,
that's the question. Do we know what it is, Eric?
Sunday at 6 o'clock.
I can look it up.
Yeah.
Same day that we have
Oh,
this meeting. It's after this meeting. So.
Yeah.
We don't need this up anymore, right?
And I think that would be, they may have questions, but also I think part of the power of this is going to be
There was
in
nobody
you
there,
all,
right?
like us supporting you and driving it, right? Like, I think it is going to mean more coming from people from within this community than it means from me, you know?
I'm happy to work with whoever wants to present, but I think it would really be cool if it wasn't us. We can say, well, I mean, I can introduce and say, here's the report, here's where we got to, but then I would love for it to come from somebody who's a Holyoke person and not me as the consultant, because
Yeah.
I think that's really important to the process.
I'm happy to co-present with somebody.
All right.
You two,
I'll be present.
Yeah.
you two would do a great job together.
They
So
don't have the next day.
yeah, that's what I say. I have to. I'm gonna call in the morning and find it out.
Yeah.
Trying to look
Yeah,
Everybody's trying to find it out.
That's what I thought. So I'm gonna call in the morning and get a schedule together.
yeah, as long as I don't have, I'll go.
Okay, so the next step is going to be I'll go home and tidy this up a little bit and share it back out with the group. We'll confirm when that next school committee meeting is going to be, and we all as a group, so we'll present whatever is sort of cleaned up for that. We can always revise it and refine it and say this is a living document. We're still collecting input that we're still back with you, but we wanted to share it with you, June. We'll have another meeting in June where we can talk through some of those next steps and then say, I think the really important part too is like moving forward from here, what's the sustainability of this? What's the plan for this committee to continue doing that work? Because it is really important work. And from what was just shared here, the school committee has a really big task, and I think that you all have a unique opportunity to help advise and guide them. You have their ear, right? Go ahead.
Can I say, can we please make sure that, can we please make sure that to invite the people that are being here so that the school committee can see how diverse this group is? Because, I mean, it's not only HPS, there's people from the community, there's parents, grandparents, you know. So people that are being here for a long time, like the lady that was here, I think it's Victor, the other guy, man that comes here.
On the school committee, isn't he?
Is that the older guy?
Yeah, the
think
one with
he-
the white hair.
I think he was.
Oh, Orlando. So He's not in the school committee?
Oh, that's right, he took over for.
So I think that's important, and also I feel grateful that we are being part of this group because that we are that our voices are being heard. And that we have a safe space to be able to express ourselves and be part of the decisions that they're going to be making for to choosing the next superintendent. So.
I will add that I don't think we should choose the people who are going to present here. I think it should be
Yeah.
That collective.
Next. So maybe we send out the email and we say, if you're interested in present. One of the things I do get a little wary of sometimes is if we're not firm, what I don't want is all of a sudden nobody really knows who's doing what. So I want people to feel set up to be successful too. I want to say, like, I feel honored to have been a part of this process. I was typing up all of this feedback, and there's a tremendous amount of care and thought has gone into it. You all have created space for each other, but you've also provided a lot of input, and you're being really thoughtful about what you want for students in this community. And it is just an honor. I feel like very grateful that you've trusted me and welcomed me into this space. Like, I feel very appreciative for that. So thank you.
I'll just say ditto. It has been really cool to be part of, so.
All right.
Somehow I can't get that image down, but that might be his job over there, I don't know.
Oh, we're famous.
So, thank you, we'll get a copy, we'll get a schedule, and we'll keep going from there.